Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital Leaders Show, where each week we discuss key issues and news at the intersection of business, technology, and the humanities in hopes of making you a better digital leader. We're live each Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the audio recording is available on major podcast platforms. I'm Dan Goodstein. I head up the Institute for RPA and AI, as well as the Digital Enterprise Institute. We're a professional association, media, and peer-to-peer research network providing education, networking, and advice to over 130,000 members globally, all around automation, enterprise AI, and digital transformation. You can check us out at irpaai.com. This week, we're discussing the people aspect of digital and data velocity for insights with Tata Steel's global head of digital transformation and automation, plus other headlines for digital leaders from the world of enterprise technology. My co-host, as always, is Carlos Alvarenga. He's a researcher, an author, an educator at the University of Maryland, Georgetown, former advisor at EY and Accenture, and new student. Yes, Carlos?
That is correct.
So while I'm talking to my kids about back to school this week, I got to ask you about your first week at school.
That's right. I returned to school, to graduate school at the University of Maryland. First step, in a road to an eventual PhD out. So continuing the research for my first book, thinking about the next one, I thought this time I'd do it a little bit different focus and to bring an academic focus to the project. So yeah, it was nice to go back. It's always interesting to be in a classroom with much younger people. So I actually enjoy that. It helps you kind of get perspective on how things change and how perspectives of the world change. So it was wonderful. And everyone at University of Maryland has been great to work with so far.
Well, you're brave, man. Anytime you go back and do something different, learn, educate yourself, but especially in a world where you're there, I assume, with a bunch of Gen Zers and IRL, in real life, my new favorite term.
That's right. Yeah, I'd say so far everybody has been a 20-something-year-old PhD student. So again, a personal and intellectual challenge to keep up with them. Right, I'm not as fast as I used to be, so I'll have to kind of raise my game to make it through the process. But so far so good. Mm-hmm.
Good for you for doing that, and welcome back. I know we took a week off last week, and you're a busy guy. You also, your book just came out, The Rules of Persuasion. So, have you had a chance to keep up? I know you're a news junkie like I am, and a stock market junkie. What's you got a chance to keep track of any of the stuff going on?
Too much this week. The conversation I've been having with friends as I talk about the book has really been about the climate. Right, I've got some friends in Europe who emailed me about the book, and they're going through this very remarkable kind of heat wave. We've got our own issues here now in September. It's probably the hottest back to school in September we've had in a while. So it's interesting how more and more that becomes the dominant, or it's a dominant theme over so many other conversations that I normally would be having at this point. Right, it seems like these people who I speak to, you're now conscious of it's here. Right, after decades of talking about is this real? Is it not real? Who contributes? When's it going to become a real issue? Right there, the future is now. And so the concept, we talked about this last time we were together, right? The consequence of having to completely almost reinvent society in a way, right? Different ways of building, different ways of thinking. There are schools that are closed because they don't have AC, right? So I find that more and more like a really sobering conversation with people.
So there's that. And then I don't know if I'm just in this social media echo chamber, but I continue to see, as the kids are going back to school and you're going back to school, it seems like there's this big wave of people going back to the office, this post Labor Day, return to the office or else thing just seems to be on my feed every day. And there was, I don't know if we spoke before or after this happened last time, but that Zoom piece that we talked about a few weeks ago where the Zoom CEO said everybody's got to come back to work or come back to the office. Since then, the internal memo leaked where he basically said, we can't sustain the creativity and work culture that we need at this company on Zoom. So crazy stuff.
Yeah, paradoxically, as COVID seems quietly to, like Dracula rising from the grave.
Yeah.
This year, I'm starting to see people with masks again. They sort of gone away. I was at the American Museum of African American History this weekend, and lots of people wearing masks, right? And so I think the ironically, right, it's like, okay, it's time to get back to the office, just as this is very kind of quiet resurgence of the thing that took us out of the office in the first place. So we'll see how those two forces play out over the course of the next few months.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I had on my list is, New York City has been in the news for a couple different tech crackdowns over the recent weeks. The first one was against AI based hiring systems, which we've talked extensively about that on this show. And then the most recent one was new rules around Airbnb. Essentially, they're shutting down the at least the primary benefits of Airbnb, at least according to the people using it in New York.
Mm. By the way, I did want to ask you one other thing too. I don't know if it's the GOP debate, right? Obviously, one of the candidates is a tech person, right? Who kind of bursts onto the stage, echoes of other tech people who have more and more of a public persona. And any reactions to that from you?
Carlos is trying to pull me into
Well,
politics.
just
Danger, danger. My alerts are going up.
in general of what is it about tech people, right? That these days they feel like, okay, we need to have a social voice. Maybe.
Yeah, well, without giving my personal political opinion live in front of people, I will say that I think there's always been something very intriguing about a person, especially in the tech space where you build things,
Right.
and part of building things is using technology, obviously, but also relationships and partnerships, and maybe some of the things that our guest will talk about today. So I've always been intrigued, and I think that was part of the initial intrigue for many, even people that ultimately did not continue being a fan of Donald Trump. I think even for someone that initially thought, hey, it'd be great to have somebody who's a business person, maybe a tech leader, who comes from the private sector, who's done these kinds of things before. The allure of that kind of person, running the country and being able to really interface with the reality of business today, and building a company and running a government, maybe more like a company than a bureaucracy. I think is very interesting. I with him in particular, I don't know him well enough to comment, but I do think there's something there. I think the bigger problem is just the political cog in this country, where it's just very difficult if you're not part of the establishment, candidate, and now the establishment has shifted a little bit, but if you're not part of the system, then I think it's difficult. And I don't know what he brings to if you're wants that trailblazer business person, what are you getting from him over Trump, unless you're just anti-Trump? I don't know.
Yeah, no, interesting. Just because again, we talked before about politicians don't understand tech. Sometimes you see tech doesn't understand politics, right? And so the chasm between the two sort of worlds, and how different it is when you're dealing with the complexity of all of these social kind of forces, right? That impact something like a GOP debate or any kind of debate, right? Or a political campaign. So much harder to deal with than, okay, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to build something, right? That's such a focused activity for the most part. So I just found it an interesting, an interesting thing to watch another business person, right? There's a long tradition of this, sort of toss their hat into the political ring, and then the reaction to that sort of going forward. So it'll be
I agree. I think I've always been intrigued by the idea, first of a business person, but you're right. Now I think, we're at this inflection point. I mean, technology has always been, important, but I think we're at this, inflection point where technology and policy is starting to intersect a lot. And we've talked about this as well. I think, even from a generational standpoint, the people that are legislating on these things are, much older generations who are not comfortable with the technology that we're talking about. Right. So yes, it would be, I think it'd be, beneficial to have somebody who, is more versed in technology, if you're going to be pushing policy and regulations, and, pushing the SEC. And we talked about the cryptocurrency regulate, right? These AI regulate. So there's a lot of, tech company stuff going on. And it sounds ridiculous to ask that the people that are litigating this stuff actually understand it.
Well, one final point, right? Taking a step back, for the most part, right, we've been governed by lawyers, people who trained in law. Generally speaking, I think most presidents who had some sort of formation kind of in that background, or political background, let's say. We've now had two MBA presidents, right? George Bush and Donald Trump, and the last 20 years or so. So interesting to see if now we get a third business MBA president, right? And how different does the business person coming to politics sort of look at the mission and the role? So I just find it kind of interesting that we for 200 plus years we didn't have right people who learned business
Yep.
in politics, and we've had two now, and maybe we'll get a third. We'll see.
Yep. Well, it's gonna be interesting for sure.
Okay.
So let's get to our main topic today, which is the people aspect of digital and data velocity for insights. We talk a lot about digital transformation on this show, but I wanted to invite somebody who's kind of living and breathing this every day. So let's welcome Jaydip Chakrabarti. He's the global head of digital transformation and automation at Tata Steel Consulting. Jaydip, good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Carlos. Am I audible? Am I audible on the bridge?
Yes.
You hear me well? Awesome. Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, JD, before we jump in, maybe just give everybody a little bit of your background. I know you for a number of years, but your background and the context of how you got where you are today.
So, I'm about two decades and a half old in the industry. I'm an old man. But I've lived through Industry 3.0 and living through 4.0, going into 5.0 as well. So that's what I believe is a very exciting journey. I've been with the Tata Steel and Tata Consulting for over 2 decades now. I had a little bit of a spacewalk outside of the Tatas, outside of the mothership for about 5 years, but again came back here. So anyways, being through automation, being through digital, been through AI, and like you said, living and breathing it. And right now, we are as a company, we are evolving into an AI-based organization. Just to put things in context, we plan to run our manufacturing plants from away from our homes. That's what the dream that we have. So that's my role. That's my role of leading the industrial consulting arm of Tata Steel within the Tata Steel Industrial Consulting Group. So all digital, all automation is my responsibility, and my responsibility also is to share the knowledge outside and help other companies be there where they want to be in the digital transformation arena. So that's who I am. Happy to be here and very excited.
Thanks for being here. And so give us some of the highlights, Jaydip. I know Carlos has some questions as well, but just maybe you could set it up. Where did the project come from? What was the genesis of it, and how has it kind of transpired over the last number of years? I assume the pandemic had something to do with the strategy, but I'm curious as to, was it more of a chicken or an egg kind of situation as well?
Absolutely. At Tata Steel, it's a global conglomerate actually in the steel making. The Tata Group itself is a more than $1 billion, more than $100 billion organization or conglomerate across the globe, and Tata Steel is the mothership company of that particular group. So we have an kind of objective of growing multifold, and it was conceived some years back. Obviously, as a part of manufacturing, we had to use robotics, we had to use automation for quite some time. But what happened, what transpired in 2018 around that time was that we had to go real digital, and digital does not mean automation. It means transforming your operations, transforming your enterprise, essentially building a connected enterprise across operations, across assets, across people, and across processes. So that's what the journey was all about. It was conceived at the senior most level of the organization, and that's where the journey started. It pretty much started around 2017, 2018, and then it kind of got a catapult during the COVID times, because obviously we had to produce steel, but we couldn't go to work. So that was something that really, in a way, helped this whole process. And in that process, we also earned this global lighthouse accreditation from the World Economic Forum. for 3 or 4 of our sites, three done, one ongoing. And so this whole journey has been a very exciting one, and I'll be very happy to cover details on that.
Dip, I'll go ahead and kick it off. Any transformation is also a narrative, right, for a company and for an organization. And we've talked about this in the past. In fact, our last episode was about storytelling, right? And
Mhm.
if you take a step back and think, what was the narrative, right, that was in your mind, or that you wanted to use as the catalyst for this effort?
Sure. Um, like I said, when we spoke about this whole digital transformation, the narrative that I can think about was how to make ourselves different in the marketplace and create value for the customer. Now, creation of value is kind of a cliche term, but what really transpired there was how can we, in fact, go beyond the value and generate something which is worthwhile for us. At the same time, how we could do quality, sustainability, revenue, margin, all of it together, and with a very focused uh, objective of increasing our capacity and increasing our EBITDA margin. So what we did was, we said that we need to visualize tomorrow and then enable it and then create the tomorrow. I mean, that's the best way of keeping ahead of the competition, keeping ahead of your vision. So in terms of visualizing tomorrow, we said that digital is the way to go. All of us know that, but the people aspect of digital, and we realized it pretty soon that the people aspect was very important. As an example, we realized that it was a mindset issue. Digital is not about technology, actually. It's not even about, it's about business, but it's about mindset. It's about a mindset of a people, of an organization, because an organization is like a living is a living being. Any change you push into the organization, they'll try to resist it, and it'll be resisted by the people. So we said that to enable tomorrow, to visualize tomorrow, let's look at um, talking to people. We obviously we did the usual, we kind of went to workshops, this and that, but we took a very new approach. We used reverse mentoring. We chose a bunch of Gen Zs who are very good in digital adoption, and we chose the senior management and we made a reverse mentoring program so that the senior management appreciated how digital can really make their lives easy. In that process, the the Gen Zs also got to know what the business was looking at, and in between the whole workforce, we kind of intervened at multiple points to kind of make them all conversant with digital. Basically, we helped them understand what it is all about through the comic strips, through narratives, leader videos, etc. Then we develop the general capability in them to accept digital, because when you push digital, basically people think that it's a push, and they would not like it because they were afraid that jobs will get done, which was not the case actually, because their jobs got real easy. As an example, as an outcome example, our blast furnace operators don't go to the blast furnace. They run the whole blast furnace from a remote operation center. Our raw materials operators don't go to the raw materials site. They sit in the same location alongside the blast furnace operator and run the raw materials logistics. So you can imagine when the blast furnace is kind of under maintenance, this person knows right there. And that's the transformation that we are looking at, that the person realizes what it can bring to table. because the digital transformation that we saw is, I mean, it's basically across the value chain. If you lay the value chain and you first create the impact centers where a digital intervention can really add value, and then sum up all the impact centers to see if they're balanced. So it's like we call it the thousand lights of digital. Unless they are orchestrated well, you don't get the full beam of the light, because it'll be always operational at the lowest point of excellence. So that's something that we had done, and to enable that, we actually used technology. We used training of people. We had schools of excellence. We chose people who could do what they wanted to do. So on one hand, we chose the people who would be consuming the digital benefits. On the other hand, we had to take the people who would create the digital benefits, the whole deep learning aspects of it. So we chose them. We ran analytics workshops. We ran analytics academies within Tata Steel, and we did a whole lot of things. So the whole people transformation was something that we had visualized and we had done.
Let me ask a follow-up question. When you
Yeah.
use, sorry, excuse me, when you use the term digital, what did that mean to you? What did that mean to the effort? Right? Because you can define that word in many different ways. So when you
Right.
say digital transformation, put the transformation part for a second, and just what is it, or what was it in all these workshops and discussions that was the thing that you were trying to enable when you used that term?
So we are in steel making. So steel making has a lot of manual touch points. So for us, digital meant no manual touch point. So what we are going ahead is towards a dark factory, where the factory would work by itself through robotics, through video management solutions, through supervisory controls, through PLCs, and controlled remotely from an operations center. So digital for us means take out the human touch points
Hmm.
from the operating floor.
So analogy might be auto manufacturing, kind of the old version, and then when the robotics revolutionized, right, the way in which cars are made, maybe that's a related kind of parallel to this.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a real analogy in there. Um, Again, if you look at, we have something called kind of silica optimization, or let's take the ferroalloys. The ferroalloys we add into the whole process is a very expensive alloy, by the way. So today or yesterday, people were adding it based on SOPs. So much of grade you want to have, so much is the alloy mix that you got to put in. But today they add it based on what the AI tells them, or they don't add it. The AI tells the PLCs to add it, and it gets added. They kind of control it from sitting in the remote operations center. So that's what is digital for us.
Got it.
So much, Jadeep, of the challenge, I think, everywhere, right, with companies operating with remote employees, work from home, even distributed kind of workforces, is that the work that you're doing is either not tangible, or if it is tangible, you're not touching it, right? It's from afar that you're doing it. And so I've been following a lot of research around just the morale and the isolation of employees, and actually the lack of loyalty of employees now, because they don't feel like they're a part of something. Have you guys addressed that? And if so, how? Where you say, hey, these are workers that used to physically be in the building and maybe see the benefits of what they're working on. Now they're sitting somewhere else and, working on something from afar that they can't feel and touch.
Yes. So let me divide the worker base into a couple of categories. One is from the manufacturing floor, the blue collar workers, who needed to be on the floor every day, every hour of their shift. So they are not there anymore, but they are sitting together in a remote operations center. So they are seeing it happen in front of the screens on the command center. They are using that particular feed to use the digital twins to do the what if analysis and the if what analysis, and so their work pattern has changed. So they are very excited actually. Initially they were kind of pushing it back. So that's one category. The second category of people are the people who are making it happen. So in Tata Steel we had before we to 2018 or so, we had three streams of business transformation slash IT people. One were the business transformation folks who were telling the business that, have you looked at Amazon the way they're doing? The logistics folks, are you looking at the Amazon logistics? So they had the ideas, but they didn't have the scale. Then there was the traditional IT, which said that, hey, you got to use an SAP and MES and so on and so forth. So they knew how to do it. They didn't have the ideas how the business was looking at it. And there was a third who were looking at KPIs, frameworks, and stuff like that. And they said that, hey, this is the best in class KPIs frameworks. Why aren't you using it? So our first thing was to put them all together under the umbrella of one IT, as we call it. So in a way, the agile workforce working. So in a agile working pattern, actually you are working very closely together, though you are sitting away from your desk. And like I was saying in the beginning of the call, COVID helped a lot because they're anyways back at home. So they got a on-the-job training on that for a couple of years. So no, they do not in Tata Steel. They do not feel that seclusion, and we are slowly getting back to our flexi working. 2 days, 3 days, one day, depending on. So we have options for people. We have two options. One is absolute work from home or a flexi work from home. So we give the choice to people depending on the work profiles, um, and yeah, that's how we do it.
So how influenced was your effort by competitors for doing? In other words, was this a kind of internally focused thing, or did you constantly, or did you in the process say, look at company X, look at company Y, and see and use them as a catalyst for moving this forward?
No, we were totally, yeah, we were totally internally focused actually
Interesting.
because, yeah, I mean, because our competition was nowhere near in their digital thinking. Uh, Really, there were no, and Tata's as a group is always very very well advanced. So we had that advantage,
Mhm.
but we were totally within ourselves.
So you felt that even though you were, sounds like you were the most advanced industry, that you weren't going to rest on that. You wanted to really push this as far forward as you possibly could. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that people would catch up, and so we are kind of always digital is a journey, as we know.
Right.
It's never a destination. So we are keeping on improving ourselves. So from data visualization, we came to data analytics, and from the extractive AI, we moved this year to generative AI. So it's been a journey so far. So we kind of devised from technology front. We devised our whole stack in 7 layers: infrastructure, data, and insights. The three main layers, and then some layers in between there. In terms of people transformation, we are constantly transforming the people as we speak. In terms of process, I spoke about the impact centers. So we kind of laid out a whole value chain, and we understood where the impacts could be in terms of our goal. Our goal is yield, throughput, quality, from the manufacturing standpoint, which in turn would give us revenue and EBITDA improvement. And so far, we have gotten a benefit of $1.3 billion over the last 6 years. So, and of which point 0.5 has already been accrued. So we feel we are quite advanced in that journey, but we are definitely keeping a watch out as to what the others are doing. People will catch up, but we have to stay advanced.
Yeah, I mean, it's very intriguing that when we talked about this earlier, Jaydip, you mentioned the people transformation part of things as important as the technical side of the transformation, and I know this, but so many of the conversations I have with organizations who have embarked on transformation and failed, it's that they didn't think about this portion, or they didn't execute on this portion. Carlos, you and I have talked about the importance of storytelling in the corporate world, right? And internal selling, right? So it's, very, very intriguing, Jaydip, that you guys, really thought about the people side of this. On the more technical side, the other side that I often hear is maybe the biggest technical hurdle to a lot of these transformations is, how disparate the data is, how siloed the data is. Was this also a challenge for you guys?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, we had three silos, as in the business transformation group, the IT group, and the third group who were talking about KPIs and governance. And obviously, our data was siloed across the organizations. So, I mean, what we realized was that choosing the right use case mattered a lot, and you have to choose the right use cases across the process. It's not just one use case that can give you the benefit. Like in a blast furnace, if you are putting the stuff in the furnace and taking the hot metal out of it, so at the entry point, exit point, and in between, across the board, you have to see. And can you see inside a blast furnace? No, right? So you have to have the right camera. You have to have the right image processing done there. So the data at every point is very important. That's number one. Number two is any kind of data we saw had to be analyzed from four perspectives. One is who is the customer of the data? Like in the B2B situation, the customer is the business. So do we have enough data and variety of data for that customer? Then what operational data do we have? Do we have the right sensorizations across the whole plant? Are they in volume? Are they in variety as well? So you have customer data, you have operations data, great. But do you have the systems to capture? Are the systems, uniform systems? No system is uniform in today's world because we have gone a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So can we create a gold template where you can ingest the data? Then the people aspect. I mean, the people, are they capable? Like I said, are they aware? The people, do they have the general capabilities? Do they have the deep capabilities to create and consume the data? And finally, when all of this is done, if I do this digital transformation project, what risk am I running? Am I running a risk of shutting down my blast furnace for 10 days, which I can't? So basically, all these things um, had to be analyzed, and had to be analyzed at all the impact points. So when we propose a digital project, a team comes in and does all this analysis. We have a framework now because we have learned through it. So we do the analysis and we have a stage gate process of stewarding it. So D0 is an idea, when the idea comes. D1 is D1, D2 is the business case formation. D3 is the implementation. D4 is the actual accrual. So whatever we promise at the D1, D2 stage, we have to accrue in the D4 stage. So we have a very clear benefit realization package as well, process as well, to kind of capture the benefits across the globe. So the point I was trying to make is that yes, data is very important, but the data synchronization and the is also important. I mean, if you have a process, if you have data in some process, and if you have in some process point, and you have don't in the other process point, but they're both impact centers, then in our business you have to put the sensorization there. So that's something that you got to do. You have to realize that work has to be done. So unless you put the sensors, you'll not get the data. So I mean, we saw about six roles in this whole thing. One is a business interpreter who converts a business problem into a data problem. The data scientist who takes the data problem and breaks it down. A data engineer who gets all the data. Then a data architect who makes sure that the data is integrity, the configuration is good, and then the operations oscillator that once the model is done, then take it to the operator and explain how to use it and not get flexed out. And finally, the automation engineer actually who actually makes sure the data is available. So that's how the whole thing works, and it's a very well structured, well orchestrated process. Did we learn it day number one? Not a chance. We made a lot of mistakes, but having now had three lighthouses under the belt and one ongoing, I think we are pretty much. We humbly saying we're pretty much there, and that's the whole reason that we want to reach out to the entire manufacturing industry, any industry as a matter of fact, and let them know what's framework.
What would you say was your role in all of this? Right, we've talked about teams and the Gen Zers and the reverse mentoring. You as the person who is the head of digital, when you thought about this, right, sitting at home, and you thought, okay, this is, or when you took on the project, what would you say, looking back, was your job in the middle of all this?
I mean, we had the right cellos, we had the right violins, we had the right pianos across the board. I would, people in my position were the conductors. We had to choose the right people. So the whole Gen Zs, we had to choose the people who had the right bent of mind. The senior management was senior management, so we had to make them aware that that you're going to learn something from somebody. So they had to get down from their high horses. So we had to talk to them. So it was a whole process. It was not just me talking there. It was the whole organization came alive on that. And in Tata's, the culture of Tata's is a very, very inclusive culture, and that helped us a lot. Um, so yeah.
Right, wonderful.
Jaydip, you mentioned the willingness to make mistakes, right? You hear this thing about failing fast and that kind of culture, but when you talk to people within organizations, you find that sometimes that's just PR and that's not really happening, within the culture of the organization. Did you guys run into that, or how did you kind of adopt that culture?
Yes, absolutely. We ran into that, and it's not a peer for us. Actually, it's a very, very tough situation for us. But because, like I said, D0 at the idea stage, when we take it to the idea, then at D1 and D2, we have to create the business case for that. So there's a traceability throughout. So the failing fast happens and the course correction happens in these stages, because unless you are course corrected, you will not move to the next stage. So you are failing fast in small chunks of the whole thing. So you are kind of course correcting as you go along. That helped us a lot. The whole stage gated process, and then we believe that whatever is whatever is measured, it gets done. Whatever is measured and reviewed, it gets transformed. So basically, that's something. So the measurement in our case, Tata Steel is a very strong process oriented organization, and the measurement framework is very, very data oriented. So that helps us a lot. And when we fail, when I say we make mistakes in those small chunks, small segments, and we quickly course correct it. So that leads to delays in the projects, but it doesn't lead to the kind of eradication of the project, because at D0 the idea when it was when it was being implemented, we had already corrected it at multiple points. So it was supposed to be, it had to be a success.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
with it.
Great. Jaydip, thanks so much for joining us and sharing the story. Really, really helpful and insightful.
Thank you for coming, Ginger. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So, Carlos, interesting, right? We talk so much, we evangelize so much on this show about the people and the storytelling and the culture. And then, at least for me, I speak to a lot of organizations, as I mentioned, that, that's kind of lip service. But it seems like this was really, the people factor was if not a the primary concern for, this transformation. So it's good to see, leaders thinking about that.
It's funny, right? Because it's a little bit of a paradox. On the one hand, the goal of the project was to get rid of people from the shop floor, but it was the people who had to make that happen, right? And I think that's one of the really interesting things in tech and in some of these kinds of projects where that some roles or a way of life or even a way of working, you might say, is going to disappear in this process, right? And it requires a human volition to take that on and to make that happen, and then to have faith that the organization will reward that kind of when everything's said and done. So this is how it works. Kudos to the manager team for saying, listen, you're going to be eliminating roles that have existed here probably since the beginning of the company. I'm sure some of them had, right? But yet this is the right thing to do, and so you will be rewarded for doing that, right? And again, we go back to that's the narrative, right, of change that has to happen, but at the same time, let it be driven by people and then protect the people who make this happen, which doesn't always happen right then.
Yeah, it's I mean, from the beginning of automation, that was one of the key issues in the adoption, right? Is that there was nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but most organizations weren't communicating, what they ultimately wanted to do, what the roadmap ultimately was. And then you see this, we talk a lot about the mismatch between, the open jobs that are out there and the skill sets that are out there. It's because this hasn't been, first of all, communicated, but second of all, there's not a lot of organizations out there that have, invested in the people enough to say, hey, I know that you're not at this place yet,
right,
but through this process, we want to get you there so that when the job changes or the role changes, you will be the one doing that role. And by the way, it, in theory, will be a better job for you.
And you wonder, because Tata's a conglomerate and you've got Tata Consulting, right? You've got this storehouse of knowledge about technology and they're doing it with their clients, right? You have to imagine that had to play some kind of influence in this, right? Like you said, that's one part of the business, but it's a big business, right? And they have the luxury of being able to call in on an in-house consulting, which I'm sure played some important roles in the course of this process. But an interesting story, Dan. Nice guest to have on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us this week. As always, we offer free coaching sessions and state-of-the-industry briefings on a variety of digital transformation, automation, and AI topics and use cases. Check out network.irpaai.com to schedule. And if you haven't already, buy Carlos's book, The Rules of Persuasion, on Amazon. And we're going to be doing a masterclass webinar session with Carlos, I think next month, Carlos. So
I think it's October 12th, right, for all ARPA and DEI members.
So, check that out. And if you haven't bought the book by then, you'll get some of the benefits, and then I'll really guilt you into buying the book. But no, in all seriousness, it's great for anybody in business, especially corporate world, sales, marketing, communication, but really anybody who's got to, be in business and do this. What we're talking about here is, tell stories, get things done, deal with culture and, internal selling and all those sorts of things.
All right. Thanks for plugging that.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.